My husband, worth hundreds of millions, splurged tens of millions to host an exhibition for a college student he had been sponsoring for 2 years, yet he refused to spend $20,000 to save my son. Leo, severely dehydrated, died right in front of me. He looked at the death certificate and actually laughed, saying, "I couldn't believe something like severe dehydration from diarrhea could be fatal. Don't be sad, Sage is due soon and you can raise her child." I only replied with 4 words, "I want a divorce." Unable to get any money from Ethan, I sold the engagement ring he had paid a fortune to create, for a fraction of its worth. Rushing back to the hospital with the money, I heard the piercing beeps of instruments from the ward at the end of the long corridor. A few seconds later, the world went quiet, as if someone had pressed pause. "We are sorry, Ms. Grace, please accept our deepest condolences. Actually, with your Leo's condition, if the medical fees had been paid a few days earlier for his medication, this wouldn't have happened. This hospital has a policy that medication cannot be administered to a patient if the patient or their family has not paid the medical fees in time. We apologize, Ms. Grace, we truly did our best. Please accept our deepest condolences." I opened my mouth, my throat felt like it was choked by a cotton-wrapped blade, both gagging and aching, unable to utter a single coherent sound. Dragging my heavy legs to the bedside, I didn't know how to face Leo's passing. Just this morning, Leo, lying in bed, could still manage a smile and call out, "Mommy." The television on the white wall froze for a moment. When the signal returned, Ethan's face appeared on the screen. He was smiling. The man who was usually aloof in public now stood behind the sponsored college student, gently greeting every guest the girl knew at the exhibition. Some bolder individuals, without hesitation, gossiped about their relationship right in front of media bloggers' cameras. With my years of experience as an advisor, I suspect Mr. Ethan and artist are more than just a sponsor and a sponsored individual, aren't they? Come on, tell us. Are you two getting married soon? Sage blushed shyly amidst the teasing, her gaze, filled with affection and bashfulness, constantly lingered on Ethan. Ethan didn't refute these remarks, the smile on his lips showed he was happy. But isn't Mr. Ethan married? His child is 5 years old. Could it be that Mr. Ethan and Mrs. Ethan are already divorced but haven't announced it publicly? Those present fell silent for a few seconds. The person who had just spoken retreated into the crowd, not daring to say another word. Sage's eyes reddened awkwardly in front of the camera. She timidly turned to Ethan and asked, "Ethan, why didn't Mrs. Ethan come to the exhibition? Is she still angry about the last auction? Perhaps I should go to Mrs. Eaton's home again to apologize." Without a moment's hesitation, Ethan refused. "No need. I've spoiled her into being too narrow-minded. It was just a set of heirloom jewelry, yet she attacked you over it. Since she's become so materialistic, I won't let her use a single penny. I can't let you take that slap for nothing. It annoys me to see her vent her anger on you." This fiercely protective tone confirmed everyone's suspicions about Eaton's and my marital problems, and also led most people to believe I was the one at fault for the deterioration of our relationship. Mrs. Ethan must be a very calculating person. It's exhausting to be around someone like that. No wonder Mr. Ethan developed feelings for someone else. Let us put that aside for now. They have a child together. If they really divorce, what about Leo? If Ethan and artist continue to develop their relationship, they're sure to marry in the future. Being a stepmom in a prominent family isn't easy. My heart felt like it was being deep-fried in oil, repeatedly battered 1,000,000 times over. I could no longer tell if there was more sadness or more anger in my chest. The AC in the ward was set very low, and wisps of cold air drilled into my body. I shivered, unable to resist reminding the family member by the adjacent bed, "Please turn up the temperature a bit. My has severe diarrhea and can't get any colder." I don't know how much time passed, but that chill still pierced my heart. I impatiently looked up, only to meet the nurse's horrified gaze. "Miss Grace. Normally, family members shouldn't stay in the mortuary for more than 15 minutes. You've been here for half the afternoon, please leave quickly. The chief of staff is also urging you to sign the death certificate. Anne's father, he hasn't shown up at all. Now that Leo is gone, he should at least make an appearance. Please try to contact him as soon as possible. My mind exploded. I fully snapped back to reality, then stumbled to my feet and walked out. The process for obtaining the death certificate was quick. Within 2 hours, I stood in the cold wind, my hands trembling as I dialed the funeral's number. Afterward, I called Ethan more than 30 times. As expected, none of them were answered. Leaning against the cold tiles, I couldn't help but quietly laugh at myself. The home staff picked up Leo before the hospital's chief of staff left for the day. Along the way, I don't know how many times I cried myself unconscious. Upon arriving at the funeral, the staff immediately took Leo to the morgue, then gently advised me that I could go home and bring his favorite clothes to dress him in, so he could leave cleanly. That's right. Leo, just like Ethan, was a bit of a neat freak. After the remains arrive at the funeral, cremation usually takes place within 72 hours. However, if the family requests, we can extend the cremation time to 3, 5, or even 7 days. Do you have a preference? I reached out and touched Leo's cooling face. 3 days, I said. It was late at night when I returned home in a daze. Seeing me, the smile in Ethan's eyes faded. Why are you back so late? Is feeling better? Sage heard he's been having diarrhea and was incredibly worried, so she specifically asked me to bring back 2 boxes of anti-diarrhea medication. I leaned away to avoid the medicine he offered. Seeing the date on the box, I pulled out a cold smile, and tears streamed down my face uncontrollably again. Expired medicine. Who is she trying to kill? Ethan's expression froze. The side of the box with the manufacturing date flipped over, and then a flicker of impatience crossed his face. Sage just didn't notice. Can you stop making such barbed comments? You know pregnant women should avoid medication, and she's just a young girl in her 20s, how could she pay attention to all that? Also, why didn't you come to Sage's art exhibition today? Didn't I tell you days ago that this exhibition was important? Did you have to be so difficult today? He instinctively scolded me to defend Sage. I don't know when it started, but he could now completely ignore my red, swollen eyes. Do you still remember your initial reason for sponsoring Sage? Ethan stiffened, swallowing all his scolding words. You've forgotten, haven't you? Then do you remember when your relationship with her started to change? I looked at him calmly. Do you remember what you told me after I found out about your absurd night together? Silence fell in the living room. The faint, almost imperceptible vetiver scent in the air pulled Ethan's thoughts and mine back to the past. Sage was a college student Ethan brought back 2 years ago after a business trip to a remote rural area. At the time, she resented her fate because her family wanted to marry her off to the neighboring village chief's son. She tearfully spoke of the difficulties she'd faced in her studies, accused her parents of favoritism, and the determination in her eyes moved Ethan. The CEO, worth hundreds of millions, decided to sponsor her. So, he brought her back and settled her into a reputable university not far from the estate. He bought her a house, a luxury car for transport, and gave her a black card for spending money. Gradually, Ethan grew closer to her and further from me. He even became completely indifferent to Leo. Finally, one night after working late, Ethan came home, but in doing so, he made a grave mistake. After I found out, he knelt on the floor, continuously pulling my hand to slap his own face. I'm sorry, Grace, it's my fault. I drank too much at a business dinner and she was forced by me. I promise this is the only time. I won't see her again, and once she graduates, I'll stop sponsoring her. And then, Sage got pregnant. A sneer played on my lips. Ethan, can you tell me why, if your night with her was a year ago, she's now 8 months pregnant? Has some new medical research proven that ovarian fertilization can be delayed by 2 to 4 months? Enough. Facing my questions, Ethan's face fell. I'll explain all this to you later. Where's Leo? Why didn't you bring him back? It was just diarrhea. Does he really need to stay in the hospital for so long? Thinking of Leo, my heart felt like it was being relentlessly pounded by 1,000 iron hammers. Taking out the folded death certificate and divorce papers from my bag, I sank down at the entrance, utterly disheartened. 3 days from now, cremation. Find some time to come with me to see him, and while you are at it, let's finalize the divorce. Taking the certificate and the papers, Ethan's scrutinizing gaze fell on me. Suddenly, he actually couldn't help but let out a laugh. Such a coincidence. He loosened his grip, and the certificate and papers fell to my feet. I'm sorry, I couldn't believe something like severe dehydration from diarrhea could be fatal. I know you are sad, but it's okay. Sage is due in 3 days. She's been very understanding and grateful for my sponsorship. I've already discussed with her that after her child is born, we'll bring the baby over for you to raise. You just focus on being Mrs. Ethan, but there's a condition: you have to allow Sage to visit her child frequently. I froze, turning my head to look at him in disbelief. Ethan, how could you say such a thing? Are you an animal? My voice was loud, waking Sage, who was sleeping in the master bedroom. Ethan glanced at me, his eyes filled with disapproval. Keep your voice down. Sage is taking a nap with the baby inside her. A crisp slap echoed. Ethan's face turned to the side. He twisted his head back, his eyes full of coldness. Feel better now. Don't make jokes like that again. Who dies from diarrhea? And joking about Leo like that, aren't you afraid he'll pick up bad habits from you? So, he didn't believe the death certificate. A wave of exhaustion washed over me. I picked up the divorce papers, walked to the coffee table, and meticulously wrote my name. Putting away the death certificate, I turned back and reminded Ethan, remember to sign it. Ethan was about to say something, but a glance from the corner of his eye instantly dispelled the irritation on his face. Awake. Sage emerged from the master bedroom, the strap of her silk pajamas loosely draped over her shoulder, a large, glaring red mark on her collarbone. Ethan, did you and Grace get into a fight? She dramatically picked up the papers, her almond-shaped eyes filled with helplessness. Grace, you are divorcing Ethan. Why? Is it because of me? I scoffed, looking at her. Yes, because you shamelessly got pregnant with a married man's child, and because he's despicable enough to have another family outside. A misty film instantly clouded Sage's eyes, while her other hand tried to conspicuously cover the mark on her collarbone. I'm sorry, Grace, I didn't know opening the door that night would cause such a big misunderstanding. I thought Ethan was coming to tell me his troubles. I found it laughable. What kind of troubles? Do you have to abandon your wife on your wedding anniversary too? Confide in an outsider. Ethan brought over a jacket, draped it solicitously over Sage's shoulders, and didn't forget to comfort her. Don't mind her. She's taken the wrong medicine today. I didn't want to waste any more time with the two of them. Ignoring the provocation in Sage's eyes, I walked into Leo's room to pack his clothes. When I came out again, Sage was the only one left in the living room. She crumpled the paper in her hand, and threw it at my feet. I recognized it at a glance. It was Leo's death certificate. Who gave you permission to rummage through my things? I said, looking at her with a cold face. She exaggeratedly opened her mouth wide, her eyes shining with glee. Grace, your son really died from diarrhea. That's ridiculous, haha. Ethan was right. Weak children really are so difficult to raise. I trembled with rage. Without thinking, I strode over and slapped her hard. She shrieked, falling backward onto the floor. The next second, 2 sharp slaps landed on my face and head. Ethan picked up Sage, his gaze sweeping over me filled with murderous intent. Grace, you've gone too far. Sage cried weakly in his arms. I just asked about Leo's condition, and Grace. I just suggested that Grace shouldn't raise the child to be so delicate, and shouldn't lie with the child. Ethan, did I say something wrong? Ethan shook his head. Grace, what did Sage say wrong? What has gotten into you? This is the 2nd time you've laid a hand on her. One more time, and we'll really get a divorce. With that, he carried the pale-faced Sage, and strode out the door. Not wanting to get entangled with them any further, I deliberately waited 15 minutes before going downstairs with my packed luggage. Ethan had probably forgotten. I am a gentle person. As long as my boundaries aren't crossed, I would never make things difficult for anyone, let alone hit them. That heirloom set from the last auction was part of my bridal trousseau, that he had a renowned designer create for me, 6 years ago, after going abroad specifically for it. Not just Ethan, but probably everyone had forgotten that the Brooks family and the N family had always supported each other. Unfortunately, after that plane crash, the N family gradually became a shell of its former self. This jewelry set was something Ethan had sworn on my parents' grave, promising to give me everything best and most perfect, just as they had loved me. But 6 years had passed, and he had long forgotten the remaining payment for this jewelry set. After the deadline, the designer had no choice but to put it up for auction. All I wanted was to reclaim what was originally mine, but Ethan had stopped my bank cards, and as a result, Leo couldn't receive medication. I woke up again in the hospital, staring blankly at the ceiling. You reawake. The nurse removed the needle from the back of my hand. You fainted from low blood sugar by the roadside last night, and were brought in by a couple who saw you. A couple. The nurse's face lit up with a smile when she mentioned them. Yes, the husband adores his wife. When she gave birth to their child, he was extremely worried, bustling around, and even breaking into a sweat while waiting outside the operating room. How long was I unconscious? You were brought in the night before last. I thought, I probably knew who the couple the nurse was talking about were. I asked the nurse for the room number and followed the directions. Just then, I saw Ethan feeding Sage porridge in the room, and Margaret was smiling, looking at the baby. Seeing me, Ethan paused. You are better. The doctor said it was just low blood sugar. Just remember to eat on time next time. Then, like presenting a treasure, he pulled me into the ward. Come look. Isn't Sage's child adorable? Doesn't the baby resemble Sage more? For a moment, I seemed to see a trace of the new father he was 5 years ago. You are so happy she gave birth to the product of your infidelity. Ethan's and Margaret's smiles froze on their faces, and Sage's eyes welled up with tears. Grace, I know you blame me, but please don't talk about the baby like that, okay? The baby is still so young. Ethan shot me a displeased glance, then picked up a tissue to wipe Sage's tears. He was indeed very attentive. Margaret was a sensible woman. She told Ethan to take me out and clarify things, also stating that I would always be their Brooks family daughter-in-law and Sage's child would not displace Leo's position in the Brooks family. What pleasant words. Mom is right. Ethan took a deep breath, his tone softening a little. Grace, I hope you understand that no one can affect your or Leo's position. So, can you reduce your hostility towards Sage a bit? She grew up in hardship, she's truly pitiful. Also, I asked the hospital today. Leo was discharged a long time ago. Where did he go? Didn't he always feel a bit lonely being the only child at home? Now that he has a little sister, he must be thrilled, right? And wasn't he wrong that Leo is a boy? You shouldn't raise him to be so delicate. You should take him for more exercise, that way his health will improve. It was always like this. What about you? A flicker of guilt crossed Ethan's face. Sage's child was just born, and needs care. HMPH. I looked at him mockingly. You haven't forgotten why Leo had a weak constitution, have you? Ethan stared at me in shock, evidently having completely forgotten what happened back then. I lost my parents at 19 and became a child no one wanted. It was Ethan who appeared and brought me back to the estate. At 20, he proposed to me, coaxing me to give myself completely to him. That same year, I found out I was pregnant, and then, because he went out racing in the middle of the night and left me, feverish, alone at home, I had a miscarriage. During that pregnancy, there were even 2 heartbeats when checked. Originally, I wasn't supposed to have children within 2 years after the miscarriage. However, Ethan didn't believe I had forgiven him, and feared I would secretly leave, so he forcibly impregnated me. At that time, my body hadn't fully recovered. A weak mother leads to a weak fetus. This was something the doctors had personally told Ethan. Now, he had forgotten all of it. I lowered my gaze and again held out the divorce papers. Sign them. Ethan looked at me with a complicated expression. Realizing I was truly serious about divorcing him, he suddenly became somewhat angry. These are just minor issues. We can resolve them calmly. It's not necessary to. It is necessary, I interrupted him directly. Ethan was enraged and embarrassed, and his words became unrestrained. Where will you go after the divorce? The family house is already occupied by others. Even if you don't care about yourself, what about Leo? Do you think someone like you, penniless, can take Leo with you? Suddenly, he thought of something, and his tone relaxed. Or are you saying you'd rather give up Leo's future right to inherit Brooks, just to divorce and take him away from me? Our argument attracted a crowd, and Margaret quickly pulled us back into the ward. I wasn't particularly bothered by any of this, I just wanted to get divorced quickly. Yes. That single word made Ethan's face instantly fall. Veins bulged on his forehead from anger. Fine, keep being unreasonable. He immediately called his lawyer to draft a new set of divorce papers, and sign them ahead of me. A sigh of relief escaped me. I quickly signed, folded the papers, and hurried out of the ward. Because I left in such a rush, I didn't hear Ethan's muffled words, "If you regret it, we can talk properly a few days from now, when Sage is discharged." The person behind me saw my hurried yet light steps, and their heart sank involuntarily. Ethan inexplicably thought of Leo, whom he hadn't seen in over half a month. A sudden sharp pain pierced his chest, and he shot up, rushing out of the ward. Leaving the hospital, I got into the car at the corner and headed to the funeral. While waiting at a stoplight halfway there, the man in the driver's seat handed me a sketch. I recognized it instantly, it was Leo's drawing. "You fainted 2 days ago. When I went to see you, the nurse asked me to give this to you. She said she found it under Leo's hospital bed." On the white paper, black lines broadly depicted me coaxing Leo to sleep. There was no father figure. The child's naive drawing struck a heavy blow to my heart. They say the passing of a loved one brings a lifetime of sorrow, let alone Leo, whom I had carried for 10 painstaking months. I had bonded with him before anyone else. His passing was like half of my vitality being taken away. Unconsciously, tears soaked my entire face. Liam pulled the car over and gently wiped the tears from my face. "I'm sorry, I came back too late and couldn't help." I shook my head, sniffled, my voice still choked with sobs. I was useless. Liam had returned the afternoon Leo passed away. The moment he heard the news, he found me. But I was too grief-stricken at the time, and coupled with not having seen or contacted him for 5 or 6 years, I didn't recognize him at first. I merely thought it was the kindness of a stranger. That day, he walked me to my building, and asked for my contact information. "Grace, you can contact me for anything. I won't leave again." Grace, such a familiar yet strange address. Before my parents' accident, everyone called me that. Ethan did too, but after we got engaged, he started calling me wife. After a period, he only called me by my full name. The memorial service at the funeral was simple. I just needed to personally wipe Leo's body clean and then dress him in fresh clothes. It was a simple task, but I was drenched in sweat. Or rather, I cried a sweat. Midway through the cremation of the remains, Ethan called. His breathing was slightly ragged, as if he had just run several miles. "Where are you? Where's Leo? Is he with you?" "Grace, what I said earlier was a bit harsh, but you shouldn't just disappear with Leo without a word. Bring back now." The divorce papers were signed in anger. "Come back, and we can talk things through properly." How ridiculous. Even at this point, Ethan still thought I was just playing games with him. "Ethan, you're worth hundreds of millions, casually spending tens of millions to sponsor a college student's art exhibition, yet you wouldn't even pay $20,000 for Leo's medical fees. You are right, diarrhea doesn't kill people. But if the medical fees had been paid a few days earlier, Leo wouldn't have died. Ethan, Leo and I were truly unlucky to have you as a husband and father." Hanging up, I mimicked Ethan, labeling his number for spam blocking. It was strange. I had told him so many times that Leo had died, even put the death certificate right in front of Ethan, yet he never believed it. Now, with my decisive hang-up, a layer of panic enveloped his heart. Ethan stood helplessly in the corridor, his hand still in the position he had held it for the phone call. In the hours since Grace left, he had already searched everywhere he knew, even asking Uncle's estranged family, but they all said they hadn't seen Leo. During's 2 or 3 days of unconsciousness, he was so preoccupied with Sage's post-birth matters that he didn't even bother to check on Leo. It wasn't until Grace left with the papers that he remembered to ask Margaret, "Has still been having diarrhea at your place lately?" That's right, he had always thought Grace's statements were merely to anger him for his indifference towards Leo's illness. While that was true, why couldn't Grace consider things from his perspective? Leo only had diarrhea from a common cold, but Sage's labor could start at any moment, so of course he had to pay more attention to her. Besides, Sage was right. It was just a common cold, Leo wouldn't be in danger. Grace must have sent him to Margaret's place for care. But when he met the confusion in Margaret's eyes, all the certainty in his heart vanished at that moment. Sage leaned on the handrail, slowly walking up to Ethan, the worry in her eyes clearly not faked. "Ethan, have you managed to contact Grace? What did she say? Will she bring Leo back?" Ethan frowned, not answering Sage's questions. He felt some irritation inside due to the matter with Grace and Leo, and his tone unconsciously became a bit sharper. "Didn't the doctor say you shouldn't walk alone out of bed? What are you doing out here? Where's the baby? Have you fed the baby?" Sage looked a bit wronged. "I did, I was just worried you," and Grace would argue again. For some reason, whenever Ethan saw Sage like this before, he couldn't help but be gentle with her, even more so. But ever since that phone call, every time he saw Sage now, he felt a knot of frustration in his chest that wouldn't go away. "You don't need to worry about Grace and me. I'll go call a nurse to bring a wheelchair to take you back to your room. I have something to attend to, so I won't be visiting you today, Ethan." Ignoring calls, Ethan strode away. He was now full of questions, and most importantly, he needed to see Leo. The panic in his heart grew stronger. He hurried to the pediatrics building and found the chief of staff anxiously inquiring about Leo's condition. But he had never even visited Leo, so how could he know who Leo's attending physician was? After causing a scene in the ward for a while, he was escorted out of the hospital by several security guards. Helpless, Ethan could only use his status and financial power to find the hospital director, demanding that the director tell him every detail of Leo's illness and treatment process. As long as he understood everything clearly, he would pay to replace all the hospital's equipment with new ones. The hospital director was naturally willing. He summoned Leo's attending doctor, and from the doctor's words, Ethan heard everything about Grace and Leo. By the end, the interns who had followed them in even expressed regret, and defended Grace and Leo. "Miss Grace and her child are very pitiful. We heard it was because her husband froze all her bank cards, so she couldn't withdraw money even though she had it, which is why it was dragged on until Leo died from diarrhea and dehydration. Yes, and her husband apparently committed infidelity. He's truly despicable. During his hospitalization, his father never showed up even once. Oh, and the noon before Leo passed away, Miss Grace asked us to look after Leo, saying she needed to go back and get some money. But in the end, it was too late." They spoke excitedly, not noticing that the man before them had bloodshot eyes. "Get money." Ethan dazedly opened his phone. He hadn't logged into his messaging app in a long time. After logging in with a verification code, he discovered Grace had sent him 99 plus messages. He scrolled up, message by message. Starting from half a month ago, every single one was a plea for him to reactivate her supplementary credit card. Bank cards, he thought. Right, why did he freeze her bank cards? The auction, he remembered. At the time, Grace and Sage saw the same item at the auction. To make Grace yield it to Sage, he had someone stop Grace's bank cards. The hospital director saw he was lost in thought and looked pale, likely guessing his relationship with Grace. "Mr. Ethan, the deceased has passed. Please accept our deepest condolences. Please accept our deepest condolences." Ethan suddenly felt utterly ridiculous. When couldn't get help for so long, he must have hated having a father like him, and Grace too. After a long while, Ethan finally found his voice. Afterward, where did she take Leo's remains? Maple funeral. This time, Ethan didn't hesitate. He rushed to the funeral immediately, but he was still too late. Grace had already left with Leo's urn. Only the funeral staff remained, cleaning up. Seeing him alone, the lead staff member approached to ask his purpose. Upon learning he was looking for the mother and son who had held a memorial service there that afternoon, the supervisor sighed. That child was quite pitiful. It was just diarrhea caused by a minor cold, but because his mother supposedly had no money, it tragically cost him his life. I originally thought the young man, who was constantly worrying by her side, was Leo's father. He looked so decent. I even couldn't help but scold him, but it turns out I misunderstood. Leo's father never showed up at all. I've never seen such a tragic memorial service. Bist's mother and that man, no other relatives or friends came to visit. Sigh. Rickling's tear-swollen eyes from 3 days ago, and the utter disheartened look on her face, when she threw the death certificate and divorce papers at him. His heart ached so fiercely he nearly lost his footing. Lo! He looked at the viewing room, which hadn't been fully dismantled yet, and stumbled towards it, his knees hitting the concrete floor hard in front of the empty memorial photo frame. I'm sorry. Daddy was wrong. Daddy let you and Mommy down. Ethan remembered how Leo used to be so clingy with him. He, just like Grace, loved to follow him around. Even when he worked late into the night, the big one and the little one, at home, would always be waiting for him on the sofa. But when did Leo stop being so clingy? And when did Grace become more withdrawn, even hostile? Do you still remember your initial reason for sponsoring Sage? That's right, it seemed to be right after he started sponsoring Sage. Originally, he just felt pity for the girl. Although she had parents and family, they didn't treat her like a human being just like Grace. Ethan felt like he was going crazy. How could he have thought Sage was as pitiful as Grace was when she lost her parents? How could he compare Sage to Grace? What damned compassion was he showing Sage? Ethan looked up, a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Sage sat restlessly on her hospital bed. She was worried Ethan might bring Grace back. If that happened, she wouldn't be able to smoothly take Mrs. Eaton's place. But at the same time, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, Grace had signed the divorce papers and left, and even the biggest obstacle had died from illness. Now had nothing, while she, Sage, had not only safely given birth to her child, but also had Eaton's affection. Just as she was thinking, the sleeping infant beside her suddenly burst into wails. Her thoughts interrupted. Sage grew irritated. She was already agitated from not being able to reach Ethan for several days. Now, with this disturbance, her temper flared even more. Cry, cry, cry. What are you crying about? All you do all day is cry, sleep, and eat. If it wasn't to play the role of a good wife and loving mother in front of Ethan and Mrs. Margaret, do you really think I'd love you so much? Anyway, it wasn't Eaton's. If it hadn't been a last resort, how could she have found someone else? Just as she was cursing, Ethan, whom she hadn't seen for days, suddenly twisted the doorknob and walked in. Sage's words caught in her throat, and she didn't even have time to retract her annoyed expression. Ethan. A currying favor smile appeared on her lips. Why are you here so suddenly? You didn't even tell me beforehand. You scared me. So, is willing to come back. And you haven't seen him in so long. Ethan, does he miss his dad? Sage was about to console Ethan tenderly and delicately, as she had countless times before, but in doing so, she overlooked the coldness on his face. Sage, you said you saw Leo after giving birth. When was that? Do you remember? Sage offered a sweet smile. Of course I remember. I was on my way to the public restroom, and happened to see Leo returning to his room after using the bathroom. HMPH, I checked the surveillance footage from that day. You never even went to the corridor. The smile instantly froze on Sage's face. She instinctively tried to cover it up. Well, then, maybe I remembered wrong. Really, Ethan couldn't be bothered to pretend anymore. He slammed a stack of thoroughly investigated documents onto the bed. Then you can possibly have misremembered your relationship with the person in this photo, can you? At Pines. Liam and I walked one after the other, each holding a bouquet of chrysanthemums. This spot is very good, quiet yet not remote. Thank you, Liam. You've been worrying about all this for me lately. Liam set down the chrysanthemums and shook his head. It's what I should do. Grace, your mental state. I lowered my gaze, quietly staring at Leo's black and white photo on the tombstone. Since accepting Leo's passing, I had developed moderate depression. Watching's life slip away before my eyes, that feeling of helplessness cast a grey shadow over my life. Let's not talk about that anymore. Didn't you become a chief of staff? Why aren't you at work, instead of being with me, every day? Liam smiled faintly. I resigned. I was surprised, knowing that a career in medicine had been his dream since he was 15. Before I could ask, he told me why. I still liked the feeling of being your little sidekick before I went abroad. These past few years, chasing that dream, I missed too much, and I was too late for so much. Now, I don't want to be late anymore. Of course, I understood his direct words, but I truly wasn't interested in starting another relationship right now. Liam, Grace. A familiar voice rang out from behind me. When saw the man standing behind me, he felt a flicker of annoyance, but it was only for a moment. Even now, he still believed I wouldn't leave him, that I just hadn't forgiven him yet. As long as he gained my forgiveness, everything would go back to how it was, and then, they could have another child. Grace, I want to talk to you alone. Can we? Ethan didn't want an outsider to interrupt his conversation with me. Liam glanced at me, and seeing my nod, he said, I'll wait for you, by the door. A light rain began to fall, and Ethan opened a black umbrella. He seemed to gather his thoughts for a long moment, and started with an apology. I'm so sorry, Grace. I shouldn't have so easily believed Sage's words. Kids get colds, it's nothing, in fact, a few more might even make them stronger, and I shouldn't have cancelled your bank cards. As he spoke, he slapped himself hard across the face. It's all my fault. How could I have forgotten that the heirloom jewelry was originally meant for you? He cautiously reached for my hand. Most importantly, I shouldn't have gone back to the wrong address that night. That was my huge mistake. Afterward, I showed no remorse, deceived you, lied to you, thinking that if I used protection, nothing unexpected would happen, and then treated you that way when I couldn't hide it anymore. Grace, every single mistake was mine. I failed as a husband and a father. I didn't take responsibility. I've investigated thoroughly. Sage's child isn't mine. It's the son of the village chief from the neighboring village, the one she almost married back then. I didn't know they were still in contact. After that night, Sage didn't test positive for pregnancy for a long time, so she found someone else to father the child. She always wanted to seduce me into having a true Brooks family descendant to join the prominent family. I was utterly deluded. I should have listened to you from the start. I shouldn't have sponsored her. With a scoff, I pulled my hand away. When stubbornly decided to sponsor Sage back then, I told him, a family that truly mistreats their daughter wouldn't possibly let her smoothly attend university, and even buy her an iPhone. Especially not her supposedly gender-biased parents, who she claimed favored sons, and wanted to sell her off for a dowry. Are you finished? Then leave. Don't come here anymore. Leo probably doesn't want to see you. At the mention of Leo, Ethan shoved the umbrella into my hand, and dropped directly to his knees. I know. I'm sorry, truly sorry, Grace. And I'm sorry, Leo. His voice was choked with sobs, and my eyes gradually reddened. Grace, please, you come back with me. I love you. I just couldn't resist the temptation of someone with ulterior motives. I've already sent Sage back to her hometown. I've also had all of her belongings seized. She won't appear before me again. I won't betray you again. Look, this is the engagement ring you sold at a low price. I bought it back. Can I put it on you? He reached out to touch me, but I avoided his hand. Grace, I swear, please, even if you consider how my mother, and I gave you a place to stay back then, please give me another chance. HMPH, it's precisely because of that I haven't demanded half of the N family's assets back from your family. When the N family had their accident, the Brooks family, under the guise of caring for an old friend's orphan, merged with and seized half of the N family's assets. The reason Ethan could be worth hundreds of millions was because at least half of that was built on the N family's foundation. You know about that. Ethan gave a bitter smile, his clothes soaked through by the rain, looking utterly disheveled. As I left the Whispering Cemetery, he loudly asked me, if I return the family's assets to you, would you even look at me again? Grace, you won't forgive me, will you? That's right. I told him firmly. Not long after, Ethan publicly apologized to me online, and also admitted that the Brooks family had been taking advantage of a vulnerable situation. He promised to return everything that didn't belong to Brooks. The assets my parents left behind returned to my possession. Overnight, I became a multi-millionaire, but in my heart, I still felt the absence of those $20,000 in medical fees. Liam was a very good person. To help with my mental illness, he quickly obtained his counseling certification. Under his guidance, my condition gradually lessened to mild. On another world tour, Liam didn't pass through the gate. He bewilderedly opened his phone to check the flight, and after I stopped him again, he looked at me with confusion. Grace. This time, I want to try being alone. I touched the pendant on my necklace, and smiled at Liam. Sorry, I cancelled your flight without telling you. But this time, I want to explore the world alone with Leo. A few minutes later, Liam put down his phone. After I gave my consent, he reached out and hugged me tightly. Have a safe trip. Neither of us noticed that after I finished speaking, the person who was about to go through the gate next to us, quietly walked away from the gate. A year later, I had completely settled in Switzerland. Here, there was an art academy ranked among the best in the country. Leo loved to draw, and he also loved watching me paint. He once said he wanted to see his MOMS paintings on TV. Carrying hopes, I picked up my paintbrush again, just like I used to hole up in my studio day and night before I got married. Meanwhile, news of Ethan came from back home. Back then, Ethan had chosen a self-destructive path to seek even a shred of my forgiveness. Now, a year later, the scandal of that incident was still a hot topic online. Brooks' stocks plummeted repeatedly, most of its employees were laid off, and now, Brooks had completely collapsed. As for Ethan, he became a cemetery caretaker at Whispering Cemetery. I turned around, and Liam was standing behind me, his smile radiating warmth. Your paintings are being widely reported by major media outlets back home. Congratulations. Our great artist has perfectly fulfilled the little artist's hopes. That's wonderful. I chuckled. What are you doing here? I already told you, I'd always follow you.